Welcome on back to the N Harmon Show, folks. I'm Dalton Wicks alongside Eric Harmon.
This week's episode, we go over NFL free agency, some hot topics in the MLB, and of course, I'm finally getting in a little bit of that Sharks talk. It's been 5 weeks now. I'm excited. I don't know what I'm going to say, but I'm excited.
Yeah, well, it'll be fun to talk a little bit of San Jose Sharks and their playoff push, postseason run, and everything going on in the NHL.
What lies beyond.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's kick things off with some NFL free agency talk. Lots of stuff going down since the new calendar year has flipped over for the NFL.
This is the first NFL year of free agency where I've sat down in front of a TV and just turned on NFL Insiders, and I was like, why am I'm very interested in this. I don't understand why. But, I mean, watching Adam Schefter text, do TV, take calls all at the same time is great TV. Amazing TV.
Yeah. I love watching they break down all the guys and talk about their strengths and weaknesses, do their mock top 50 free agents available, who's looking good, who might be a bust. You know, you never know with how these guys' careers are going to turn out and how the next few years. I mean, with the lifespan of an NFL player being so short, it's really difficult to predict how they're going to perform.
You're lucky to hit free agency once, at all. So, I mean, it's big moments for all of these guys because, they never know. And with the fact that NFL contracts aren't guaranteed.
And for every Tom Brady contract, you have a Johnny Manziel one. Or 5 Johnny Manziels.
Yeah, agreed.
So should we start off with a little bit of local Raiders-Niners talk?
Let's do it. One team.
Raiders.
Trending up.
We'll start with a little positivity and then we'll work our way down. Raiders made some big-time moves this offseason. Awesome to see such aggression coming from this Mark Davis-led team, and I was really energized by the fact that Reggie McKenzie is actually doing some really impressive things this offseason and not just worrying the fan base and making a lot of questionable moves. Kalichi, Asamele, Sean Smith, and Bruce Irvin, the big three, so to speak, that they've brought in so far. Still could add to it. Who knows? But right now, Asamele, they brought over from the Ravens. He's going to play some guard and tackle for them. 5 years, $60 million for him. Sean Smith, they stole from the division rival Kansas City Chiefs. Huge pickup there. Big physical defensive back. 4 years, $40 million. And then another 4 years, $40 million to a Seahawk who's going to join with his former linebacker coach, Ken Norton Jr., over in Oakland. Bruce Irvin, outside linebacker.
As a Niners fan, I've been terrorized by Bruce Irvin for far too many years at this point, so I'm glad he's out of the division. They spent about, almost $150 million, $140 million, right in that
range? I'm counting about 140, yeah.
Between those three guys.
They play out the length of those contracts, yeah.
That's a good amount of cash, but they got quality for those three players, the big names in the NFL, guys, who can make plays. Bruce Irvin, Sean Smith on the defensive side, hoping to help shore up a Raiders defense that isn't weak per se, but, they have holes that definitely could be filled, and these are the guys who are, you'd think, will be the whole fillers and make that defense just go off next year. And of course, with their offensive core that they already have, I mean, it's going to be looking real positive for the Raiders this upcoming season if they stay healthy. But of course, that's always the question in the NFL.
Yeah, you and I were just talking about this with building teams, and usually teams look to hit a few home runs in the draft first, get a couple of big-time pickups through the draft process and build some guys up, and then look to free agency to grab some complementary pieces, and maybe you get lucky and hit a few home runs in free agency, do some big signings, and the Raiders look to be doing a lot of that right now. Mm-hmm. Have that young core of Derek Carr, Amari Cooper, and Mack over on the defensive side, and then they bring in these three so far, and this looks like a team that's sort of building and coming together now, like it could be a serious contender soon. I still think they're lacking in a few areas. Like, they're still really thin in the secondary, even with the Sean Smith signing. Yeah. So bringing in a safety, maybe Eric Weddle still out there, another former division rival Charger.
Is it Bruce Irvin? I think he's the guy. I don't know if he's the guy
who's
who's
trying to bring him in.
Weddle, on the social media, calling him out, saying, come on over. Players are looking at the Raiders now because they're getting their stuff together. They're getting ready to go and start winning immediately in the next season. So it's started to become it's the Bay Area destination now. No longer is that San Francisco. Well, they don't even play in San Francisco anymore. They play in Santa Clara. But
we'll jump all over those guys in a minute.
But the one risk you have, I'd say, when you have you got signing all these free agents is how you said you got to build through the draft. you got to add pieces, complementary pieces through free agency. You can't go too hard in free agents because you have teams like the Lions over 2008 to 2012. They picked up 35 free agents, and that was the most of any team in that period, and their winning percentage was .313. I mean, you look at going down ranking. They ranked the order of free agents from 2006 to 2011. How many free agents they've signed? The lower you get on the list, the higher winning percentages there are. The winning teams, they don't go to free agency too often. I know the Broncos did that this past year, built their team very successfully. John, you got to have that right kind of talent to eye players in the free agency and know what you're getting and adding to your team and making it work, because a lot of teams, they add guys thinking they'll fit into their scheme and it doesn't work at all. So it'll be interesting to see if those pieces fit for the Raiders, and you got to hope they will.
It ultimately boils down to also being smart in free agency, and you can make a lot of splashy signings and throw a ton of money at players, and you have a lot of cap money to spend, so you just spend it. But it's also another thing to be smart about it, do your homework, do some research, look at the stats, look at the trends, how the players figure to be playing throughout the next couple of years, and making smart investments. And you look at these Raiders investments, and they look pretty good. Most of these guys are pretty young still in the prime of their careers. I love the Osamele upgrade on the line. You always need line help. It's always a smart decision to invest in your line. They're really thin in the secondary. They essentially had nobody. The DJ Hayden experiment is essentially done at this point. He's not going to really provide much there. So bringing Sean Smith in, they re-signed Nate Allen, which is a good help in the secondary. Bruce Irvin, a great complement to Mack now on the other side. Mm-hmm. So they have two really big threats on the pass rush.
And don't forget Aldon Smith.
Aldon Smith, but he's going to be out with the suspension for a little while.
True,
yeah,
that's true.
He's not going to be joining the team for quite some time.
Yeah, you look at the guaranteed money as well. Something about it's around $57 million between those. So it's only a third of their contracts of guaranteed money. So that's not too bad if you need to cut loose on these guys because it doesn't work out. So it'll be interesting to see the risk and reward that the Raiders have bringing in these big names here, because it tends to work out very well for teams, or it tends to work out very badly for teams. That's across all sports. That's just not an NFL specific thing. So we'll see.
Yeah, and so through the draft, that's another way they can upgrade the team. Also, I'm looking into some areas that they could better the team a little bit more. Obviously, the secondary is still a strong spot to upgrade. Also, running back, there's been talk about them looking at a guy like Ezekiel Elliott coming out of Alabama. It'll be interesting to see how Reggie McKenzie attacks this one, because sometimes he hits guys like Mack and guys like Cooper, but then you have Darius Hayward-Bay in the past and DJ Hayden. So you want it's either going to be a home run or a total swing and a miss, I think.
Yeah, the good news about the Raiders in terms of improving their team, they've gone from in the draft needing players at positions because they're so weak at that position that they are terrible. They've gone to a point where they're almost building for depth at this point. They're making those steps to become a playoff contending team, get to the AFC Championship, get to a Super Bowl. They've definitely improved in terms of raising their expectations and what they need going into the draft and what their level of player is at. So it'll allow them to be smarter, not take as big a risk going into the draft, trying to get that Darius Hayward-Bay, trying to hit the home run. Allow them to take a step back at that depth player they may need, trade down or something like that, to really play it smart instead of going big in the draft, which can kill you.
Expectations have raised quite a bit for Oakland. I would say it's generally going to be seen as a disappointment if they finish anything below 500. Mm-hmm. I think they should be shooting for 9-7. That's entirely possible with this roster the way it is right now and the potential all around, and especially with some of the division rivals downgrading quite a bit. We'll get into Denver and Kansas City and how those teams are looking different a little bit later. Well, we'll cross the bay now into some slightly more disappointing news. The San Francisco, or should I say Santa Clara 49ers.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, the thing about them, maybe you were saying earlier.
Ian Williams is back.
Yeah, Ian Williams, we got him on a 5-year deal. Woo! Big nose tackle. The biggest position on any side of the ball is definitely nose tackle. So glad to see that he re-signed. We lost Alex Boone, but I mean, maybe you said earlier that, you got to be smart. You got to not go splurge on a whole lot of money, because the Niners have cap space. They have a good amount of cap space. I think it's like $60 million or somewhere in that range. So maybe they're sitting back and just waiting for all this free agency, lots of money being thrown around, and they're going to hit some market inefficiencies. I mean, this is me being a very hopeful thinker right now. I highly doubt this is what's going on in their organization. I think they're all actually focused on what's happening with Kaepernick right now and trying to get him off the team. That's what the front office is all involved in. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know what their plan is, so...
Pete Prisco of CBS Sports ranks Ian Williams as number 11 on his top 50 in free agency.
Woo!
Score.
Woo!
Other than that, though, it's pretty much a train wreck right now.
Yeah, it is basically, yeah. I don't know if it's a train. I think the train wreck already happened. I think they're going. I don't think you can get, you can't go much farther down. I mean, yes, you can. I say that.
Detroit
yes,
Lions 0-16. Yes, you can.
Yes, you can. But I don't see it getting much worse. You have
careful,
players
Trent
coming
Baalke
back.
might hear you too, and then take the challenge and say, you think it can't get worse? You haven't seen anything yet.
No, I think the train wreck already happened, and I think they're starting to put the pieces back together, and it'll take time. Hopefully, it'll take a lot of time.
There are some pieces there. Eric Armstead, their first-round pick last year, look to see a little more growth from him. The re-signing of Williams.
You got Anthony Davis coming back from retirement too.
Yeah, that could help out a little bit. I don't know about an aging lineman helping a rebuilding team, though.
Yeah.
He would be much more suited to be on a contender right now and somebody who's actually playing for something.
That's true.
His leadership is about all he has to offer with that team, because it's like in baseball how they always argue having a dominant closer on a rebuilding team makes no sense, because that's typically a position that's meant to help out when you have that position at a strength that helps out a team that's actually in contention and trying to win in the playoffs.
But you always got to try and build your offensive line, make it as best as you possibly can, even if you are failing. Because if you have a crap offensive line, that's going to lead to not just bad play, but injury potential, leading your quarterback out there, leaving your running backs exposed. I mean, I think
whatever quarterback is out there next year,
Blaine Gabbert, he's not terrible.
I'm not saying I'm just saying whichever
quarterback,
because we have no idea what quarterback is actually going to take the field.
Who do they just sign?
Blaine Gabbert is re-signed, but Kaepernick could stay potentially. That's still entirely possible that he tries to work it out with Chip Kelly.
And they just signed another QB yesterday, Thad Lewis. There we go. He's definitely going to be Thad. Oh, that's a great name, by the way.
Deal breaker.
Thad Lewis, giving me a little Blue Mountain State vibes right there. But I mean, they haven't done much at all. I think they're waiting to see what's going to happen with Kaepernick and try and figure out their team's identity after once they figure out what kind of quarterback they have, what kind of offense they get around. Because if you have Kaepernick, it's going to be a lot more mobile than it would be. Oh, maybe not. You never know with Chip Kelly. He may try and run Blaine Gabbert a little bit more. Blaine Gabbert's a little bit. He's got a little bit of athleticism in him, so it'll be interesting to see.
Now, the unfortunate part, the reality they have to face is they have absolutely zero appeal right now, other than some would say the loony Anquan Bolden wanting to retire at Niner and stay at Niner. That's fine with you. You enjoy it, dude. I don't know who's going to be throwing passes to you next season, but he seems to enjoy it there. Other than him, Alex Boone jumped ship. He's tired of it. He left. He went and took 4 years and $26.8 million to play for the Vikings, protect Teddy Bridgewater over there. The difference between this team and Oakland, the coaching, Chip Kelly has a ton of question marks around him, and he has a bad reputation around the league with the players, so that's not helping the case at all. Trent Baalke has a bad reputation with handling players. Him and Alex Boone, I think, had a notable bad feud going on. And it's just the way that the organization is handled. Oakland has much more appeal now.
Yeah,
because of that.
Front office is everything.
The front office perception, because Oakland's turning things around, so they're looking a little bit better, even though, I mean, Mark Davis isn't the most intellectual guy in the world either. But I think it's more to have to do with McKenzie turning things around. It's pretty much McKenzie versus Baalke, and then Chip Kelly versus Jack Del Rio. And Jack Del Rio blows Chip Kelly out of the water. And as far as respectability, the amount he spent around the NFL over the past who knows how long, from his days in USC to playing in the NFL to now being one of the most respected NFL head coaches there is, his time in Jacksonville. Players just respect him. They like to play for him. He's got a good personality. And then you go over to Chip Kelly, and he's got too big of an ego. He thinks he knows way more than he does. He hasn't been in the NFL as long as people think he has. Yeah, he had the Oregon system.
He's going to need to be humbled.
The Oregon system worked out to an extent, but he needs to work on how to transition that to the NFL. It can work. There is possibility and potential there, but he needs to make it work and complete that transition, and he's yet to do that so far.
The thing you're worried about with a coach like Chip Kelly is all those college coaches. They come from a college football where they have complete control over their players, complete control over their system. Every detail is meticulous, and Chip Kelly is probably the extreme when it comes to that, because his
some guys are just wired that way too. Look at Jim Harbaugh, the former Niners coach. Now he's over in Michigan and he has all that power. Mm-hmm. Some guys want that power. Maybe you wonder if Chip Kelly was even right to leave college.
They come up to the NFL and they just can't handle dealing with guys who are now have power themselves, because they're getting a bit of the money from the pie that is the NFL or the NFL franchise. So they're just not able to. I guess egos collide is really what happens when you come to the NFL, and if you can't adapt, like Chip Kelly couldn't in Philadelphia, you see what happens. Teams fall apart, front offices fall apart. Think about it 3 or 4 years ago, the situation was completely flipped. See how quickly perception has changed in the Bay Area. It doesn't take very long to go from being seen as one of the best teams in the league to being a joke once again. I mean, it's a slippery slope, and the Niners fell hard. They fell hard.
So what do you think he has to do to improve this year? With the limited resources he has, the limited appeal they have on free agency, they'll have some high draft picks to go along with it. But what's the approach? What does the front office and Chip Kelly do to manage the season?
We got to start off at QB. They got to figure out what their QB situation is going to be, and I think that's going to happen within the next 2 or 3 days. If Kaepernick's gone the next 2 or 3 days, then that'll throw it in one direction. If he stays in the next 2 or 3 days, I think he might stay with the team. So they need to figure out what they're going to do at QB, and then, I mean, Chip Kelly's got to implement that offense and get game time in and see how it's going to work, see how personnel, because it's hard to say what a plan is going in with a new coach, new season, with so many questions. There's literally so many questions at every position almost, it seems. I mean, it's just one big question mark. If you want to visualize what Chip Kelly's plan is, it could just be one big question mark. Yeah. So I mean, they got to focus on QB first.
I totally agree. The quarterback is how you begin rising from the ashes and how you take a team from nothing and build it into something. What worries me with the quarterback situation, and you've seen it with the Sam Bradford signing, and we'll get into Brock Osweiler signing, and the fact that RG3 and Kaepernick are seen as commodities on the market right now, that's how just not in a good place the quarterback market is, and how much people are overpaying to just grab what's left is out there. So I think the only way to really come back into relevancy is drafting a quarterback. You need to find that next guy who's
Jared Goff.
Jared Goff could be the guy, but I'm thinking, what if for some reason he's not available, or that transcendent quarterback isn't available in this draft? I've never been a guy to advocate for tanking and taking the 76ers approach, but it almost might be in the Niners' best interest, not necessarily to tank, because I think the NFL will beat them anyway, just because their roster is not that well put together right now. But maybe next year's draft, until they get that quarterback in the draft, they can't really worry too much, because without a quarterback, you're not going to get anywhere. Blaine Gabbert, as affordable as he may be and serviceable he may be, he's never going to win you a playoff game. Never. I would bet money on that.
The one thing I want to see, when we'll see it this year before, I guess this would work out, is you want to see how Chip Kelly's effect is going to be on the 49ers QBs, because he was able to make, for a year and a half, he was able to make Philadelphia's crap QBs seem serviceable and get him to the playoffs and actually win some games. So if he can make Blaine Gabbert a better QB than he is now, because Blaine Gabbert, yeah, you're right, he's not going to be a world beater, but I mean, if you can settle in maybe to a Denver Broncos role where your QB isn't gonna, you got to beef up your defense, but the Niners defense is nowhere near the Broncos defense. But if maybe you can just put them in a role where they don't need to overexpose themselves and just go a year through that, building through the team, building the playbook, building like a new team identity really, and just go into that next season to get a QB. I could see that being one of the smarter routes they can go, because I mean, it'll take a miracle for them to do anything this year. So
yeah, I agree. Okay, so let's jump into some other teams now across the NFL. We'll jump into a little bit of who looks good so far in the offseason, who's being aggressive and making some good moves, and then who's looking pretty bad right now. So to start off with a couple of teams looking pretty good right now in the driver's seat, the New York Giants, I think, have made the biggest splash so far in terms of the number of guys they brought in. They brought in 4 huge defensive players, keeping on that defense side of things that what pretty much won them. I still don't credit Eli at all for winning those 2. That was total defensive-minded football. He's serviceable. I kind of compare him to a Trent Dilfer of sorts. He's definitely not the better of the two Mannings.
It's a winning formula, loading up on that defense, having that serviceable QB. I mean, he just saw his brother do it in Denver. So, I mean, he's trying to extend.
You could argue Peyton wasn't even serviceable last year. He was
less than serviceable.
To a lot of statistics, he was bad.
Terrible
last year.
To a lot of statistics, he was the worst QB in the NFL last year. Yeah. So it just goes to show. I mean, really, if you have a good enough defense, you can carry a terrible QB. You saw it in 2000 with the Ravens. You saw it in 2000. I think it was 5 or 4 with the Steelers when they beat the Seahawks. It happens. It's the other way to win championships. Just completely ignore your QB and just load up on defense 100%. So, I mean...
But at the same time, you do credit all those quarterbacks aren't bad quarterbacks. They're serviceable at least.
Yeah.
You look at guys like Russell Wilson and your Trent Dilfers in the past. Those guys, they weren't absolutely terrible. They weren't below mediocrity. They were serviceable, and that's all they needed to be, and then let the defense carry them. But they weren't bad by any means. So there's lots of quarterbacks that are total busts and just not good for the team. They can't do it. We'll jump into a specific case of that a little bit later on too. Has been making some headlines lately. So the Giants, they bring in Olivier Vernon. They spent a ton of money.
25-year-old defensive lineman, yeah.
Olivier Vernon, big time, big boy, defensive end. One of the bigger free agents on the market. Took in the most guaranteed money out of anybody so far. It probably will stay that way. Jason Pierre-Paul, old firecracker fingers, he's coming back on a 1-year, $10.5 million deal. Hopefully he is a little smarter with how he spends his free time this time around with the Giants.
That's generous. I could have seen the Giants signing him for a lot less because of the season that he had last year. I mean, he was on the verge of almost retiring at one point in the last couple of months. So
yeah.
He gets his chance to come back and prove to NFL teams that he can still play with this 1-year deal. I think the Giants are giving him a little thank you for giving us everything you have. If we'll give you another year and then you're gone sort of deal. Because I don't think it being there much longer in New York, but it's still a solid deal. Beefs that defensive line, keeps that defensive line ready to go for the next season, and that's really what the Giants have been about the past 8 years. They always have had 2 or 3 good.
Tom Coughlin's calling card is defense.
Yeah, they've always had a killer defensive line, and they continue that now with the addition of Olivier Vernon. So, and of course, there's another signing on the defensive line too. So
Damon Harrison was also brought in, defensive tackle, 5 years, $46 million. So they beefed up that front line for sure. That front 7 should be pretty nasty looking on paper, at least. It's another thing to actually have it come to fruition. And they also added Janoris Jenkins, who's now one of the top paid defensive backs in the NFL also. A couple of questions with him and how he's performed with the Rams. There's some chemistry issues with him and how he handles his business off the field. But for the most part, he's been a pretty good, solid player. And they look to get quite a bit of production out of him. So that defense brought in a ton of big names. They're kind of taking a Denver Broncos approach. It could be the exact same thing as what they did last offseason. But the question is with them on the offensive side of the ball, too, you do still need to score at some point. And I'm not sure Rashad Jennings, the former Raider, is going to be a big-time running back, or Eli Manning at this stage of his career could still be prime time. A lot of question marks on the offensive side.
All they have right now is Odell Beckham Jr. on the offensive side of the ball, in my opinion. So if Eli can get him the ball.
Victor Cruz is still hanging around, too.
I forgot about
salsa
him.
dancing.
Yeah. He's played so little, I feel like, in the past 2 years. I've completely forgotten about him. But, it'll be on the crux of their offense. Their defense is going to show up. It'll be on their offense to make plays, get the ball to Odell Beckham, see what I didn't know Rashad Jennings was their running back. I didn't know who the New York Giants running back was because it's been
they pried him away.
Where's Tiki Barber?
That's going way back. Way back. So, yeah, the Raiders also another team that's looking pretty good. We've mentioned them a little bit with the additions of Irvin, Smith, and Osamele. Great additions so far. They could still add more. Guys like Weddle at safety. A couple other guys out there on the market. And then through the draft, they could build up a little bit also, add some depth. So they're looking to be on the rise. And also another sneaky team that we were talking about a little bit earlier. These are two big questionable signings for sure. That there's no questioning that. But the fact that they did something, I like that they did something. The Houston Texans went out and just grabbed Brock Osweiler, and they went out and grabbed Lamar Miller. Like, J.J. Watt, we care about this team.
Piles of cash.
J.J. Watt, we don't want you to play on offense anymore. We
got a running back.
We want to limit your load a little bit, so you can just handle the defensive side of things, and then you can be our entire defense, and then we're gonna just help you out with a little bit of offense.
4 years, $72 million to Brock Osweiler, a guy who's
ton
played
of money,
6 games, 6 or 7 games,
played half of a season barely in Denver and shared time. At the same time, he was learning from one of the best to ever do it, Peyton Manning.
That's true.
Great mentor. You got to look at that. Look at his sheer size and athleticism. 6'8", 240. That guy's a monster. Cam Newton kind of physicality and presence in the pocket. That's something you want in a quarterback. Not a Russell Wilson type who get his ball swatted down at the line easy. He's a big presence, hard to tackle. And he showed a lot of promise. He didn't play bad by any means. I mean, that's why he got such a big contract. They see the potential in him.
How long was Brock in Denver? 3 years before he started playing this year?
Yeah, he was there for a couple of years. He was learning under Peyton for a couple of years, I'd say.
I can just see this being a totally Texan scenario where Brock Osweiler going into this first year, he's learning a new offense.
The one thing I will say that's going to help him out, though, the underrated DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
That's going to be
he's got one of the best receivers in the league.
If they can make some chemistry there and really develop a bond and be a go-to connection between that could turn into something special. So it's not like he doesn't have any weapons to begin with. They've got a pretty decent receiving core around there, but I think the question is going to be the offensive line, whether they can help him out, and the other free agent signing that could help him out a little bit. You're a little skeptical about him, and with good reason. He has had a bit of a shaky career so far. Lamar Miller, quite a bit of money for a running back who hasn't necessarily blown anybody away. He's been pretty good. He's been serviceable, reliable. He's not going to break any rushing records anytime soon or rush for 200 yards in a game constantly. It's just not in the cards. But he'll be serviceable. 4 years, $26 million. I guess with the salary cap kind of going up and up, that's an okay deal.
It's only 6.5 per annually. But,
yeah, so they replaced Arian Foster there. Good decision, I think.
Miller, the thing about him was he was in Miami for so long. How did he not become the full-time and get 25 to 30 carries? The question becomes, was that a problem with Miami's front office, which is definitely
entirely a possibility. That is one. Yeah. Miami front offices across all major sports, including the Marlins and everybody involved. Yeah, it's not promising.
Except for the Heat. I'll give the Heat a little bit of leeway in there, but everything else in Miami. The thing that happens with the Dolphins is every 2 years they get a new head coach, and instead of trying to work with what they have, they just restart every single two or 3 years, get rid of every big name.
Philbin got fired. I don't even know who's coaching that team right now.
Oh, man. Who? Adam Gase. Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay, that's a decent hire. Stole him, former offensive coordinator of the Broncos, so yes. That's a good pickup. I like that. Offensive-minded, too. And, so hopefully that buries the trend of constantly turning over coaches over there in Miami. Mm-hmm. It'd be nice to see them challenge my Pats a little bit in the AFC East.
And they thought they were going to do that last year, and then
they thought they were going to do it.
They had the Harvard student backing them up with that those predictions that got so big last year. That was incredibly ridiculous.
Yeah,
using ELO ratings or something like that to determine who was going to win in the NFL is just.
So speaking of shaky franchises like the Dolphins, let's turn over to who's looking not so good right now with the free agency. We got to start it off with the defending Super Bowl champion Broncos, losing quite a few key pieces there. Malik Jackson ends up jumping ship. Danny Trevathan also jumped ship. C.J. Anderson next. He signed an offer sheet.
With Miami, right?
I think it was Miami.
Yeah.
And they have 5 days to match that, or else he's gone too. And then now they have no quarterback currently in the fold. Brock Osweiler gone. Peyton Manning retired. Omaha.
And the guys who they're talking about bringing in are guys like Colin Kaepernick and RG3, which, I mean, big drop-off when it comes just to personalities in the locker room. You go from the ultimate worksman, Peyton Manning, to guys who have been
veteran
dogged on.
presence, veteran savvy, knows everything, the right thing to say, how to handle situations. And then you get a guy like Kaepernick coming in there who's Mr. I don't talk to anybody.
Yeah, Kaepernick, who people were whispering about him not having a good work ethic, and then RG3, who was just a straight up knowledge that he had terrible work ethic out there and that his teammates didn't like him. So that's a big risk if you're going to one of those two guys as your QB. And I mean, who else is there right now? So
losing a couple of big.
Well, we know who they just got. Actually, why are we saying that? They just got, that was the Denver Broncos who traded for Mark Sanchez, right?
Yeah, we talked about them getting Mark Sanchez. Is he really going to enter camp as the? He's not going to enter camp as a starter.
I want it to happen.
They
so
traded
badly.
for Mark Sanchez for quarterback depth. I would sincerely hope they have a plan to put somebody else in at number one.
I don't want anything else to work out for them. I want them to come out with Mark Sanchez as their number one QB start next year. I think that'd be just hilarious.
I think they traded for Mark Sanchez and they're just like, okay, if everything else fails, at least we have Mark Sanchez. So the slow start to the free agency for the Broncos, no quarterback and possibly no running back, and losing some key defensive pieces. And we know that defense is a huge part of what carried them to that championship. It's not looking good for the Broncos. Again, that's great news for Raiders fans. Their team's on the rise. Chiefs also not looking as stable right now with Jamal Charles injury and Sean Smith going to the Raiders. So then we'll also jump into a team that we just talked about too, the Niners.
The Niners!
Niners are another team that's not looking so good right now. That's quite obvious. You know, they lose Alex Boone. That's their big loss of the offseason. Not that they had much to lose in the first place, but he's gone. So now that weakens your offensive line even more than it already was. No appeal, like we said, that front office just is not appetizing to any of those.
When you have $60 million and you're not able to pick up any like free agents at all, that just is telling about
I think at the same time, too, they realize with a rebuild, like they're still so early in the rebuild, it's not necessarily wise to just spend a lot of money. Kind of like the Miami Dolphins, just spending a lot of money on Ndamukong Suh. It's like, you got to have a plan. Got to have something in place there where you don't just spend a ton of money on a guy who's not going to be there in his prime when you rise from the ashes and you become that contender in 2 or 3 years. Because let's face it, the Niners aren't going to be contender until 2 or 3 years from now.
Absolutely,
this is not how the NFL works.
They need to start over right from they've hit rock. Oh, I said it earlier. I think they've hit rock bottom. I'm not sure. So now is a time where they need to start putting pieces together and getting it to work. But I mean, they're off to a rocky start. Off to a rocky start indeed.
Yeah, well, at least Niners fans can look back to the days of Harbaugh and Alex Smith and Kaepernick's glory days and say, "Oh, our success wasn't that long ago."
But we got it. We got a little bit in.
I was going to say, at least they can say that wasn't too long ago. Now we're going to move on to a very hopeless franchise in the Cleveland Browns, who can't even say that. It's been misery. You can't say it any more bluntly than that for Cleveland fans, in all sports, really. The Indians, Cavaliers, and Browns, no championships in sight in the past who knows how long. LeBron still hasn't made good on his promise. Cleveland Indians, they're on the rise. They're one of my dark horse teams in the MLB. They could make some noise this year, but then the Browns, just so much drama and crap going on from the Manziel stuff this offseason. Have you seen a sadder story than Manziel's lately in the past 5 years or so, 10 years, and just in recent memory?
This guy has gotten so many chances, and I started to root for him too. I was like, this guy has an actual problem. Like, if he can get fixed, he's shown potential in a couple of games in the NFL that, he could win games, but he's so messed up mentally. It looks like, just not caring where he's being, it becomes an image issue where he just doesn't care where he's being seen, what he's doing, and it just keeps piling on. And he's got to understand. It's like he just had to understand that. I mean, if it was just your first time being caught with all the stuff that he's been caught with, it'd be blown over. But he had the whole image issue, like in college too. Everyone knew he was a partying player. So, I mean, all he had to do was just write that, and it just was too much for him. So it is sad. It's like just sad as a human being story to see someone with so much potential like throw it away. I mean, I shouldn't say so much potential, but the potential was there, and he's thrown it away for just to party.
Two big factors regarding Menzel and how his career ended up tanking. The one thing is his decision making obviously is so poor. What I think was kind of the root of this problem and all the crap that's coming up with him and all the drama, when he entered college, as soon as he gets that Johnny football kind of moniker and all the fame he gets because of that, and then the influences around him, he let all the wrong kind of people hang around him, and he let them influence him into being somebody who's not a role model, somebody whose his career is destined to tank at some point. You're not going to have success if you don't take care of yourself and think about football is a business too. Like you and I were talking about that earlier. Football is a business, and it's a business decision where they see somebody who's not taking things seriously, and boom, you're cut. Mm-hmm. A lot of the money in football isn't guaranteed. Like a lot of these contracts, these big contracts that we're seeing, half that's guaranteed, maybe, and it's not like baseball where you get a ton of money and all of it's guaranteed and you can just kick back or whatever. Football, you could be gone after 1 year, and then that's it. You blew your shot, you're done.
And there's also
another wave of prospects coming in from college, and they'll just take your spot, and you're lost.
There's a blueprint for him to follow to and still be able to party and go out and do what he wants to do. Just follow the Gronk route. Like, for 5 or 6 months, focus completely on football. And then when you're in the offseason, go absolutely as hard as you can, get yourself an entire cruise, and just go and drink for a week.
I totally agree with you to a certain extent, but at the same time, the difference between a Gronkowski and a Menzel is work ethic, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Gronkowski, while he likes his partying, he also
goes hard. Yeah,
he does it in moderation, too. He's known to be a partier, but They just know when to catch. He's not literally partying 24/7 all the time. He's also at the gym, beefing up, working out, staying in top-tier physical shape, practicing constantly, watching film. There's a reason why he's the best tight end in the NFL, and that's not even up for debate right now, especially with Jimmy Graham getting injured recently. He is the most dominant tight end force that there is.
He actually doesn't work out. He just dances, and that's his workout. He gets home and he starts dancing for the next 8 hours, and then he's in great shape for the next day of work. It doesn't stop for him. Yeah, his work ethic is unreal.
I also blame the fact that a lot of these athletes in general just aren't taught the proper way of how to manage the business side of things in these careers, how to handle their money, how to be, like when you and I were having a little bit of a back and forth earlier about how guys should go about getting their money, and you argued that guys should be getting their money, get paid because they want to be able to provide for their families and they want to be, and I totally respect that, but I think where the college system and the high school systems kind of fail to a point is they don't teach us
how
necessarily about the monetary problems, taxes, how to support families, how to support ourselves, what kind of decisions we need to be making, what's a good investment versus a bad investment. We're not learning the keys to how to live a successful life, and we're not being taught the right way. It's partly to blame on our school system, and it's weird to say like, oh yeah, Texas A&M University itself is responsible for Johnny Manziel. In a way, they are though.
Yeah, no. What happens is you get these players coming with low-income players, like guys who have to play the sport to get in. They get thrown into the grinder that is the college system, where they don't get paid anything. They just get a scholarship. And then there's the scholarship. Like if you're low income, the scholarship doesn't pay for a lot of the things that you might need. Like your family sending you $100 every 2 months to pay for 2 months worth of food. Like that's how bad their situation is. So they don't get taught how to hold on to their money, and they just think, I need to just get as much money as I possibly can to provide, to spend, because this is the only route I have. They get thrown into that grinder. So then you have these situations where in the NFL they're just not prepared for what's going to happen to their money, what taxes they're going to do, like what the real life is like. They have no idea because they've just been in this situation where they haven't had any money for so long. It's just such a culture shock to them that it throws them off.
It's really unfortunate, too, because a lot of these guys are taken advantage of by whether it be greedy agents or just contracts being presented by teams that are manipulating in themselves. clauses in contracts, like secret kind of wording there, and it's taking advantage of the fact that these guys aren't well educated in the monetary process and how to handle things. If they were taught properly on how to read a contract up and down and find where people are trying to get around loopholes and stuff like that and try to trick you, it would be a much different kind of scenario, and you'd have more guys like a Marshawn Lynch, who we were talking about, supposedly hasn't spent a dime of his of his earnings. It's a guy who went to Cal, a guy who got educated, a guy who knows a little bit about how to manage his money. And so if we have more guys like that, we wouldn't have as many problems with. And then I wouldn't be sitting over here complaining about how all these guys keep holding out for more and more money. The reason why they keep holding out for more and more money is because they keep spending the money stupidly. If they had a wise investment plan, they knew exactly what they were going to do with their money, then there would be more guys like a Tim Duncan or a guy like a Tom Brady who takes a pay cut. Granted, those guys aren't like the worst off guys coming up, but the fact that they know how to manage their money is why they're successful. It's not anything to do with them. I'm buying yachts for myself and I'm buying all the cars like Cespedes is in spring training. They're making wise investments.
Well, they are educated.
Yeah,
I mean that's very that's one of the big differences you see with a guy like Tim Duncan or Tom Brady. You know that they use their education to the best of their abilities, so they have that financial I guess foundation. I don't want to say foundation because it's not like, but they have the financial industry down in their heads. They know how it works, and they've made the smart moves. And it's yeah, you're right. It does come down a lot to the education of these players and whether they're just being thrown into a grinder. They're not being prepared for real life. That's the way I look at it.
Economics classes. Economics professors that are listening in.
Econ
we need
101.
you. So you think we switch gears now over into some MLB topics, some
Let's
hot
do
topics going on right now?
Bryce
Harper. Very interesting ones going on. So basically the gist of what Harper was saying was that baseball is becoming a tired sport, and he's not necessarily on board with the fact that guys are getting hammered for celebrating, and I think he was kind of siding with Jose Bautista a little bit with the bat flipping kind of thing too, and he's saying it's not as exciting and it's not as fun for us because we can't celebrate, because like you get all that adrenaline pumping and you want to celebrate after you do something so huge and monumental like that, especially on a big stage like Bautista was in the postseason. Guys want to do that. They want to express themselves, and they feel like they're being highly censored and they have to keep playing on these strict rules, and they just want to be able to go out and be loose and just have fun with it. Mm-hmm. And especially, I agree with this too. You hit a 500-foot bomb like this, exaggerating, but you absolutely tear the cover off a ball and you rip one off a pitcher, you send it in the second deck. Yeah, you have every right in the world to sit there and go like, yeah, look what I did. Like, I just bombed that off you. I did that. Like, that took skill to do that, so you deserve to celebrate for that. As long as you're not saying the pitcher sucks or insulting the pitcher, you're just celebrating what you did. You're not directly saying, oh, the pitcher, you're bad, I'm better than you. Like, you're just saying, like, I'm proud of what I just did. That's what I think that's saying, and it's misconstrued often.
Yeah, and it's not like he's saying like you got to be able to take what another player. You can't get offended about what the other team's doing.
This generation is just so easily.
Yeah.
I preach this all the time. Everybody in this generation is so entitled and so offended easily. Just they get so uptight about. So they just need to be much more relaxed and they build up all this stress that's not needed. Just let it go. Let some stuff happen.
He said about players celebrating. If a guy pumps his fist at me on the mound, I'm gonna go, yeah, you got me. Good for you. Hopefully, I get you the next time. Which is the way you're supposed to look at it. That's not a quote, but back to the quote. That's what makes the game fun. You want kids to play the game, right? What are kids playing these days? Football, basketball. Look at those players. Steph Curry, LeBron James. It's exciting to see those players in those sports. Cam Newton. I love the way Cam goes about it. He smiles. He laughs. It's that flair. That's dramatic, and I think he's right on the point with what baseball needs, because it has gotten. It's hard for me to watch baseball games. Like, I watch baseball games when I'm like, you know what? I'll go to sleep. I'm going to take a nap. Let me just throw on like these last couple of innings of this game will really get me into that sleeping mood. It's like I don't watch baseball games like going like, oh man, or watching a baseball game from April to September or to August, I'll say, is just not something that I want to do. There's no drama behind it. They've sucked it all out. I think
the problem here too is like you're saying, more of the common fans. We're talking more about the common and general fans who aren't as into it. I wouldn't qualify in this. been diehard baseball my whole life and I'm biased on it, I find it entertaining and awesome no matter what. But it's not about me. It's about those people that they're not necessarily as enthralled with baseball, but you want to get them to watch still. And the way you get them to watch is to get them excited and get them kind of hyped up and like, oh yeah, he just flipped his, like, oh, that was awesome. Seeing stuff like that happen, that's cool. And it's like seeing these guys be way too professional all the time and people like drama. They like excitement. They want to see something out of the ordinary happen. So when you see the pitchers getting more and more dominant these days and less offense, and then you see less celebration, even though in the NFL they're cracking down on the excessive celebrations, you still see guys celebrating after every sack they do. There's even guys that still celebrate after they score touchdowns. It
Von
still
Miller
happens.
having the excellent hip thrust celebration last year. I loved that. That was him getting fined by the NFL over and over again for doing it, and him still doing it was one of the best storylines for me last year. I mean, it's fun. It was what makes the game fun. And I mean, and you have guys coming out already attacking Bryce Harper. You got Sergio Romo. You got
Goose Gossage.
Let me just throw those Romo quotes, and the Romo part is really perplexing to me. But what he said was, "Don't put your foot in your mouth when you're the face of the game and you just won the MVP. I'm sorry, but just shut up." He went on to say, "As emotional and as fiery as I am, I do my best not to look to the other dugout. I look to the ground. I look to my dugout, to the sky, to the stands. It's warranted to be excited, but there's a way to go about it and to not show disrespect, not only to the other team, but to the game itself. I don't agree that being able to put up your hands when you hit a 500-foot home run or punching somebody out and then staring them down. I'm sorry. It doesn't add to the flair of the game. That's showing up the other guy." Well, it sounds like you didn't really read the quotes of what Bryce Harper was saying.
I got a message for you, Sergio. Just shut up.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I'm a Giants fan, and I agree. I'm like, come on, dude. Like,
he didn't have any motive to go and like just let it be. Guys are voicing their opinions all the time in the sport. You don't have to just insert yourself in the conversation. Why do we care about what you think on the subject? You're an aging reliever for the San Francisco Giants who's questionably still effective, and like you're just not relevant. You're not the kind of guy who needs to be saying that. A guy who needs to be saying that is someone who's way more professional about the way he handles things. A guy that's way more serious about the way he handles things. You get a guy like Corey Kluber from the Indians, or Dallas Keuchel from the Astros. Those guys that are really serious. They don't show a lot of emotion. They just go out, get their work done, and then they leave. There's something to be said about that. That's respectful in a way. Those are the kind of guys that should be saying stuff like that. Guys that are really relevant and matter, big-time players in the game, not someone like a Sergio Romo. And it's also, it's hypocritical because he's out there and he's in denial. He's saying, oh, yeah, I just like, no, dude, you're showing everybody up. You're out there going like, yeah, point to the skies, like, yeah, like I'm the best. Like,
by making yourself the scene and showing off, you're showing people up. You're inherently showing people up. So for him to say, don't show people up is really just, come on, dude. Like, you're one of the top at doing that. Like, every save you've gotten, you're doing your little thing. I mean, Brian Wilson did it too. I mean, it's what relievers do. Like, relievers have their thing when they close games. So it's like to say to a
Grant Balfour with the A's. That was
to say to a hitter, don't show off when I fail, but I'll show off when you fail. It's just, come on, like, dude, you cannot be that hypocritical.
Bottom line is just a lot of guys like to be expressive about when they do something right, and then there's guys that like to be expressive about when they f up and too, and they do things wrong.
You have that cultural split too, because Latin players are much more likely to be that lively player because they play the game. You know, like the U.S., the way we play the game is so like it's not shared with the rest of the world. In Japan, they're a lot more. All of
those YouTube backflips you see, those are amazing.
We're the exception. We're not the rule. But yes, we play like the best league is here. But I mean, everyone else in the world plays the game a different way, and we're just trying to impose these unwritten rules that we have to keep the game like stale. I mean, that's just how it comes across to me. It doesn't help their image at all. Bryce Harper, I'm behind him 100% because that's where the life's going to be back in this sport.
They want to keep it old school and vintage. That's where guys like Gossage come in and get these old timers. It's kind of like the whole NBA thing. It's not the exact same thing, but it's kind of similar in a way where you got the old timers saying, you know, the game's not played the way it used to be, and they're upset about it. Deal with it.
Yeah.
The game's evolving.
Science has evolved.
People's attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. They want to see more excitement. They want to see that they're not as interested anymore. Back in the old days, there wasn't as much going on out in, like, with the amount of stuff there is to do these days and much more entertainment going on, people are just finding other ways to get entertained. And baseball just isn't competing as well. Back in the old days, there was way less for you to go out and do and spend a Sunday night other than just sit down and watch some baseball or something. And that's what guys don't understand. They just simply are ignorant to that fact. And it's nowadays, with the competition going on in the entertainment industry, guys like Bryce Harper are absolutely right. Be more expressive. Grab people's attention. Hey, look at me. Make drama happen. As much as sometimes we like to make fun of it and bash it, it gets us talking about it. We're talking about it, so it's doing its job. Guys like Puig, guys who are very overly expressive and make a lot of headlines, they're doing their job. They're bringing attention to the sport.
We're talking baseball right now enthusiastically, when for the common fan, this period is just like, okay, it's spring training. There's not anything going to be happening for the next month. And we're here talking, going hard on a conversation that you wouldn't have if there was no drama in the MLB. If you have everyone playing exactly the same way, it's not going to make things entertaining. It's going to make things incredibly boring, which, I mean, they're already trending that way. I mean, you guys...
Yeah.
Although the fights that do come up because of these flare-ups do bring in a little bit of drama of their own. But, I mean, I think you'd rather have your players being a little more dramatic than having your players fight each other.
Yeah, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, too. But, again, we can also just discard some really... What Gossage said is just ridiculous.
Batista's a disgrace to the game. He's embarrassing to all the Latin players that ever played before him. Throwing his bat and acting like a fool, like all those guys in Toronto. Yeah. Cespedes, same thing.
He went on to say that when it comes to analytics, the game is becoming a frickin' joke because of the nerds who are running it. I'll tell you what has happened. These guys playing rotisserie baseball at Harvard or wherever the F they went, and they thought they figured the effing game out. They don't know. Bleep. I'll just say a bleep there because I can't really say without repeating it.
See, I don't get what he was trying to say there, too. Okay, I think when he's talking about the nerds, he's talking about more the analytics coming into play and, like, the really heavy analytics, like the WAR and all these, like, the F-WAR and FIP with the pitchers and all that. Okay, and the OPS.
No, he's talking about, he actually continued right after that, a bunch of effing nerds running the game. You can't slide into second base. You can't take out the effing catcher because Buster Posey was in the wrong position, and they're going to change the rules. So he's actually talking about how the guys at the top now didn't play the game and they're changing aspects of the game that make the game that is what it is. So you can't pitch inside anymore. He's basically giving the old man basketball talk that we've heard. Like, the game's changed, and like you just said, they can't. It's another guy who just can't hold on or can't adapt to what the changes have been in the past 25 years. Where
he's also completely wrong, too, and has no say in my opinion. Being a former shortstop myself, I feel strongly about the slide rule, and particularly, that's not why we play the game. We don't play the game to get taken out, slid into like that from a guy like Chase Utley. Go watch that replay. Anybody listening right now, go watch that replay of how that slide took place and how far off of the actual goal Utley was in that slide. There's no place for that in the game. Zero place. That is totally dirty. Not why we play the game.
That wasn't to break up a double play. That was to take out the player.
Take the player out of the equation and just eliminate him from possibly having any sort of effect on the situation. He did his job. But, I mean, that's not at all what we want to see. We do not want to see other guys get injured. And for Gossage to actually, I'm really insulted by that because he's fine with guys getting seriously hurt like that. You're not blind. I mean, you're older and maybe senile now, but look at what happened. Watch 3, like, that's not what we want to have happen. We want guys to stay healthy and be the future of the sport. Because it wouldn't be the same thing if, like, let's say we replace Ruben Tejada and now put in a Troy Tulowitzki. Carlos Correa, a rising star for the Astros, somebody who's polarizing, and now all of a sudden they're gone? It would have been an even bigger issue.
I don't know what to say about these guys who are just...
The past is the past.
Yeah, science
Get with the times.
Like I was saying earlier, science has evolved. It's so much easier to see like what kind of effects these games are having on players, like, and deteriorating their careers, their healthiness. To say that the steps they're taking to make sure these players have a better lives coming out of the game and saying that that's ruining the sport in terms of basketball, baseball, or football, it's just so ignorant and so annoying because you're not playing anymore. You're you're basically saying like these guys should go through all these health problems that I went through because, that's the way the game was played. And come on, dude, it's 2016. Get with it.
So yeah, Goose Gossage, stick a sock in it. We don't want to hear it anymore. We don't want to hear any of you old timers. It's over. Your time is over. Enjoy watching the games on TV. You don't matter anymore. Bryce Harper matters. And now we're on to Sharks.
Yes, let's do it. So Sharks are at an interesting point of the season and their entire existence as a whole because they're getting to that stage where they've got two or three big players that are two big players, Joe Thornton and Patrick Marleau, your aging veterans. This is going to be their last 2 or 3 seasons of effective play. So they're making a push for the playoffs, but you got 2 teams ahead of them in the Kings and the Ducks, right? The Ducks and Kings are about 3 or 4 points ahead, and objectively, they have much better rosters, much more depth among those teams. So what's really happening is, yes, the Sharks are making a push for the playoffs right now, but you got to wonder if they're good enough to be a cup-winning team, and if not, how soon do you start making moves to get rid of guys like Joe? I don't want to say get rid of Joe Thornton. I actually want him to play on the team forever. But a guy like Patrick Marleau, whose career is kind of curtailing at the end here. Let's just go over the last week of Sharks hockey. Last night they lost against the Devils 3-0. The Devils are a terrible, terrible team this year. They're not good.
Yeah, not good at all.
And they lost another game at home. I mean, the story of this Sharks season has been we're terrible at home, but we're going to win every single game on the road. Like, they have the best road record in the NHL this season, something like 25 or 26 wins. They're going to break probably their franchise record for road wins in a season, but they're under 500 at home, which is perplexing to me. So you have those issues. You wonder
doing it for the fans.
Yeah. Well, that used to be like what we used to be. We used to be one of the best home teams in the league. Like the Sharks Stadium, the Sharks Arena used to be voted by the players. I'm sure it's not this anymore. They were the number one in terms of how into it the fans, how crazy it got at HP Pavilion, like SAP Center now.
And now
I guess
that energy is fused on over to Oracle.
Yeah, that is what's happened. So the Sharks are at an interesting point where they're good enough to get into the playoffs. I don't think they're good enough to win a Stanley Cup, and they don't have many pieces to rebuild with. They have, or to in the draft or in free agency. They don't have a lot of money to go after a guy. They don't have a lot of draft picks. They traded 2 second-round draft picks just at this latest trade deadline. So it'll be interesting. Well, it's not much to say right now because there's a month left in the season and they're making that playoff push. But down the line, there's going to be some big questions that the Sharks need to ask about themselves and figure out where they're going to go from here. Right now, let's going over they're sitting all right. They're in third place in the division. They're 3 or 4 points behind the Ducks and the Kings. If they can just win some home games, they can be in some pretty prime positioning because they have the goaltending this year. I think Martin Jones is going to be a long-term option for them. Defense, they have 3 or 4 excellent, or I'll say two excellent defensemen. Yeah, Mark-Edward Vlasic and Brent Burns, so they have a core, but it's aging, and they haven't won anything. So they're getting to a point where do you rebuild or you just blow it all up, or reload, I should say, or just blow it all up. So it'll be interesting to see. That's all I have for you for Sharks talk.
Would you say, though, that the Sharks then are kind of compared, you could compare them to like the St. Louis Cardinals this year? Because the Cardinals have had some success in the past. They won a championship not too long ago, but now, if we're talking about right in the now, losing Lance Lynn to Tommy John surgery, and now Johnny Peralta is going to miss significant time. So they've got some vets like Matt Holliday sticking around. Yadier Molina is still kind of injured off and on. And they've got a couple of youngsters too, but they're kind of stuck in that, are we really even going to contend with the Cubs and Pirates this year? Like, what do we do here? Do we rebuild? Do we get rid of Holliday? It's that kind of a situation, I think.
A little bit. I think the Cardinals have a much better grasp on their minor league system. Like, they've been able to pull players from their minor league system a lot more. The Sharks, they've had a pretty weak minor league system in the past 10 to 12 years. They've never been a team that's been really like, oh, this guy coming up the pipeline is going to be the next big guy. They've been a lot of busts. They've only had 2 or 3 picks. They've had Logan Couture work out for them, and he's having a questionable year this year. So it is. I think that.
Is he related to Randy?
Yes, they are cousins. No, they're not. But it's
pretty cool being related to somebody who's in the Expendables.
It's a little worrying seeing they have so little in the cupboard that if they don't make it on this run this year, you wonder how screwed are they going to be? Because it's big questions to ask with a lot of big name players. So it'll be a fun month, fun next 4 months for the Sharks. Very important to see how they continue this rebuild that Doug Wilson's been implementing. Oh, and we're going out. We're finishing it with that Sharks talk. Sounds good to me. You got anything?
That'll about do it for this podcast, folks. Thank you for tuning in for yet another episode, and we'll be back at it next week. It's fun hanging out today.
And I will be a little bit less hungover next week, so so that should be went a little too hard last night. Throw back to my earlier sports talk days when I did hungover sports talk in Chico. So that's what that was this week. But yeah, hope you have a good night, folks, or a good day, whatever the hell you're doing. Hope it's going good for you. It's a podcast, so who knows when you'll be listening. I'm going to go get ready for work.
Alrighty, you guys stay classy.